Hello, good evening, and welcome. You are joining us tonight for one of our regular Friday album discussion streams. I'm Matt, and tonight I am joined by Cam.
Hello, how's it going?
Regular contributor Brad is out on assignment. We may get a dispatch from the field at some point, but we haven't been able to confirm that just yet. Yes, here we are. This is lucky episode number 7 of our weekly album discussion series. Every week we pick an album that came out on a Friday, give ourselves a week with it, then come back together on a stream for an in-depth discussion. No scoring, no taste-making. Music is not sports. If you like what you see, then give us a follow on the socials, and we will let you know when we're going live. Man, Cam, I was looking forward all week to messing with you and Brad again about the order that I was going to introduce you to in. But at the last moment, I was robbed of the opportunity.
Hashtag where is Brad? I actually have no idea where he is. He sent us a message earlier, like I might still be working at 8. And I've heard nothing from him since. I hope he's okay. If you're out there, Brad, we love you.
I was gonna say, man, like you the way you rubbed your head is like, I haven't heard from him. And I was like, in how long do we actually need to be worried about this? Like,
I think he's
jeez.
okay.
Nah, yeah.
He's been online.
He's a hard worker, that one, and yeah, we do miss you, Brad. We hope to get you back with us soon, and as we say, there is every chance that we may still see him at some point tonight. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this, dude. It's been a while since it's just been the two of us. We'll have to see if we can remember how to do it.
There's still the 3 of us, man. There's you, me, and the Crackle.
It's funny. I just had a message from our sound tech saying that everything was sounding fine.
Oh, it's just me then. Just me.
But no, I've now got a message there saying Crackle too. So what I'm going to try and do is just see if we can get this sorted out. We any
Should I
better
vamp?
there? Or am I still crackling?
He's still crackling.
Okay.
It's fine. It's not. It's
I'll
not
try
that
and hot
bad.
swap to a different mic anyway, just for funsies while we're doing this. We'll see if we
I'll
can.
vamp. I'll bring out the knock knock jokes again.
Oh no, not the knock knock jokes.
I only know that one, so it's just going to be that one on a loop. That or Simpsons quotes.
I think we're gonna pull the curtain back a couple times here tonight, but I have sorted myself out a brand new setup. Basically, the thing I was hosting the stream on previously, it wasn't really up to snuff, and we could get by, but I started editing videos and things like that, it started to struggle a little bit. So I've managed to get myself a PC, which I've been waiting a little while for now. Very pleased with it. But it does mean that I'm doing lots of things right now, like staring at my screen, just like, where is this thing that I'm so used to having right here in front of me? Like our lovely chat, like Slimy Doc jumping into chat saying, skirt, skirt, mofos, skirt, skirt, right back at you, Slimy Doc.
Skirt, skirt. I can't skirt, man. Can't put that on me to skirt back at Slimy Dog like that.
It's there. It's happened. I tell you what, we'll try and move you on from it just a little bit here, and instead I will ask you the question that we start off every week with: what are you drinking?
I am drinking Old Moot, watermelon and lime. Watermelon? Yeah, watermelon and lime. I had a brief moment there. I was like, wait, is watermelon a thing? Yeah, watermelon does exist, so that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking?
Not watermelon or anything. I thought you were gonna say water lemon for a second. Yeah, no, I'm drinking some Budweiser tonight. I think I've made it fairly clear that I enjoy myself an American beer. I went down to our local shop this week to grab some beer before the stream, and I was looking at some Sierra Nevada. Like, yeah, I could go for some Sierra Nevada, not just basic Budweiser. But then I didn't want to think about Chico, California tonight. So
I need Brad's little card. I have no idea what you're talking about.
well, Chico, California is the hometown of Aaron Rodgers, who is the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And I really hope continues to be. Last night was a very long, depressing night for me and many Wisconsin sports fans. Between that and Corbin Burns going on IL, it was a bit worrying. But then we beat the Dodgers 2-1, so
Never a bad day when you beat the Dodgers.
never a bad day.
And we beat the Braves, so, Midwest sports doing bits, right?
Something like that. It's all gonna get better from here. Look, we're just trying to run things a little bit different here tonight. We're probably going to end up having a slightly more relaxed stream, I think. I mean, we're always relaxed, right? But we're going to be a bit free form, bit free flowing. But what I wanted to just say to you first, Cam, before we move on to our album discussion, is that, I don't want to abuse our platform. But this is the last album review stream that we've got booked in before our very own album goes live next week. When we're sitting here this time next week, we will have released an album. It'll be out in the wild, ripe, ready to consume. How are you feeling about that? You excited?
Yeah, real excited, man. There's a couple of songs on there that I think can generate the numbers and the income for us, because that's what we care about as musicians.
It's the
according to Daniel Elk from Spotify, consume content, all that good stuff. I'd say let's review it on stream, honestly, but there's an album I prefer probably coming out next week. So there's no slight on us. They're a very good band.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be the best British album coming out that week. They'll be the best European album coming out that week, right?
Yeah, I think we might be the best British. Oh no, Squid are releasing next week.
It's second best. Second best.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, shout out Slammy Duck and This Is Water, having a great conversation over in chat. If you want to hop in there, talk along with us tonight, especially when we get to the album review, please feel free. And if you're on YouTube, we broadcast these things live. Come on over, join the party. And there is definitely a party happening in chat right now. So look,
I have to elaborate on that one, man.
I tell you what, dude, I think you got to just jump in and check it out yourself. We're talking dark fruits. We're talking princesses. We're talking true loves. They have claimed the stream.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. That's all good. They're hyped for the album too. They're probably, our regular listeners hopefully going to buy it, pay for it, money. Pay for our advertising budget and for us to upgrade to all this quality gear that we're using.
I just do it for the love of the sport, man. Just do it for the love of the sport.
Speak for yourself.
I'm
doing it for that mill, man. That mill.
Last word on this. We have got a new single out today. If you check out Red Brick Walls by Aqua Tofana, you can see what we sound like and probably discredit everything that we've said about another musician on this stream and any future ones. But with that, I think we can dive right into tonight's album discussion. And, after a few weeks of trying something different out, we're in a little bit more familiar territory for ourselves. We have spent the last week listening to Dinosaur Jr.'s new release, Sweep It Into Space, which is appearing just there on screen for you now. I've got an I've got an excerpt from Guitar.com's review to help us set the scene. This was released on Jaguar Records. They're based in Bloomington, Indiana. They have Angel Olsen, Bon Iver, and Unknown Mortal Orchestra on their roster, so gotta love a good Midwestern record label. But yeah, you'd struggle to find two more laid-back astral pilots in the musical universe than Dinosaur Jr.'s main man, Jay Massis, and Kurt Vile, producer and co-guitarist on Sweep It Into Space, the fifth album in the 16 years since the Massachusetts alt-rock legends were born. The combination is a winning one. The former War on Drugs member and acclaimed solo artist Vile was enlisted by Massis because he, quote, was listening to a lot of Thin Lizzy. So I was trying to get some of that dueling twin lead sound, end quote. The laconic duo cut an unlikely modern incarnation of Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson, and the plan was never fully realized due to the intervention of COVID. With the sessions cut short for a record that was originally due to be released in the middle of 2020, Massis was forced to get the first Dinosaur Jr. release since 2016's consistently strong Give a Glimpse of What You're Not over the line on his own, finishing off the guitar work and playing keyboards instead of regular collaborator Ken Mowry. It's not clear precisely what Vile's producer role entailed or what Sweep It Into Space would have sounded like if the sessions hadn't been curtailed, but that's irrelevant. The band's familiar fuzz-drenched post-hardcore assault is present and correct throughout their 12th studio album, yet they cover as much stylistic ground as on 2012's varied I Bet on Sky. So, a couple of things for us to discuss here, but let's start off with Dinosaur Jr. Cam, talk to me about them and, your experience of them.
Kind of one of those bands, aren't they? That you feel like they've been in a Simpsons episode or something, so you're aware of them for years before you ever actually listen to them. Sonic Youth was that for me, it being in Peter Frampton's water cooler and all that. But yeah, I mean, I've listened to Green Mind quite a bit, which is the, I think, 1991 classic or something like that. And for me, in my mind, that's the Dinosaur Jr. sound. I think it's called Green Mind. Hope I'm not making a massive error there. I'm pretty sure it is.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's their kind of sound for me. Obviously, they've got huge singles like "Feel the Pain," which I'm sure most people that have delved into alt rock or have a sort of fondness of 90s music will know. But yeah, other than that, they kind of always pass me by a little bit.
I'm not too in dissimilar spot, to be honest. Dinosaur Jr. aren't a band that I've spent a great deal of time listening to. I'm aware of their impact and influence on the genre, but really, aside from an odd song here and there, much like you, I've not really ever had them in my rotation, right? You can trace a pretty direct line through their music to a lot of stuff that I've spent my life listening to. So I suppose that I've had passive contact with their work, just not a great deal of direct experience, right? But no, I will say that they have very directly inspired me, because I've always thought that if anybody was to come after us for for our name of our company, our channel, our label, we should just take a similar approach to what they did when they had Papered Served and just simply added Junior at the end of their name, right?
What's Ballpark Music Junior?
Exactly.
Yeah, but then it sounds like a Nick Jr. kind of thing. I'm not sure that's the vibe we want to be giving off,
You sure? You sure? I don't know.
I think we should just change it to some other type of stadium. Like stadium music. I don't know. I can't think of another one that would have a name, but
I was gonna say, yeah.
Speedway.
Yeah, Speedway.
That's about it. That's all I could think of. So
Hive mind. But yeah, I mean, back to the band as well, and getting us closer to the track, but not on it. They did post a video in July of last year that was just simply titled "Jamming to the Schitt's Creek Theme." And as somebody who recently started working through that show and vastly enjoying it, I'm absolutely on board with that. That's a great minute of your time that you can check out on. I think it's on Facebook rather than YouTube. But
never seen the show and I don't know the theme tune.
It's not a particularly catchy one. That's why you can jam along to it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, it was something we just picked up in the last few weeks looking for a new series. You should try it out. I was tentative, but worth checking out. Definitely worth checking out.
I'll try if I get some time. I will actually say I'm actually far more familiar with Kurt Weill's work than Dinosaur Jr. I saw a very stoned Kurt Weill live in Barcelona, which was a great experience because he clearly didn't know where he was. It was a super chill show. It was really nice.
I think a lot of people have that experience in Barcelona, and look, Kurt Weill's name appearing on this as producer. It was one of the reasons that I was so drawn to this album. You introduced me to Kurt Weill a couple of years ago. I've often got Loading Zones and Pretty Pimpin' like on my playlists. I don't know exactly what you would call his sound, but I know his approach to rock gels with me just perfectly. And, you know, I was excited to hear what his addition to this album would bring. Yeah, he is explicitly featured on a few tracks. One of the singles, which was, you know, why I knew this was coming out and why I knew we had to listen to it. But as the press blurb kind of laid out, not entirely sure just how far his engagement with this project went, thanks to our old friend Corona.
Yeah, I hope it's not that far as producing goes. You can hear it when he's writing on some of the tracks, but yeah, as far as a producer, I don't know what his credentials were, and we'll get to the production on this album in a bit, but I've got some things to say about that.
You're tipping your hand very early here, my friend. Very early.
I just had to get it out there.
Yeah, we've had an offer in from chat, a drinking game. Take a shot every time Cam mentions Sonic Youth and Smashing Pumpkins in a stream challenge.
Dude, you die. I don't want to be responsible.
Does sound unsafe. Does sound very unsafe. Drink responsibly.
How do I get around that? The band of Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon, Steve Shelley.
I
like what I like.
You lean into it.
Yeah, but I don't want to kill anyone. That's the problem.
It's on them. Drink responsibly. Drink
Sonic
responsibly.
Sonic Youth. If you say Sonic Youth into a stream 3 times, does Thurston Moore appear behind you and like blow your mind with some psychedelic riff?
I really wish I was better at video production right now, because that feels like something I could make happen, but no.
We'll try.
I'm too scared to press any buttons right now, lest it all come down.
One day.
Shall we get into the track by track here?
Yeah, definitely.
So sweeping into space, we start off and are welcomed to the album by I Ain't. Do you want to kick us off here? What were you thinking when you came to I Ain't?
Yeah, it comes in with this quite pretty, yet really over fuzzy riff. And it's quite immediately to me, from what I've heard before, distinctly, this is what Dinosaur Jr. sound like. This is every live video I've ever seen of Dinosaur Jr. This is every album I've ever listened to of Dinosaur Jr. This is what they sound like. Riffs, 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 riffs. Loads of fuzz, you know, that kind of thing. And you get the first hint on this song. They're not about to reinvent their wheel. And they're just kind of out to make a solid album. It kind of meanders along with the distinct vocals of JC Massis, or however you pronounced it. I've never been quite sure. Kind of mumbling, I ain't good alone. And he's got that very distinct voice, which I think is a bit Marmite to a lot of people. People either love it or hate it. I'm actually just about to completely go against what I just said, because I don't really have any strong feelings for it either way. Just riffs, bro.
So you've mentioned a line of vocals. You've mentioned a line of vocals that appears many times during this opening track, and you said that it goes,
I ain't good alone, right?
So I think on the majority of my listens, I heard I ain't good alone, which, you know, it's simple. But I thought it was quite an effective phrase to be repeating, particularly when you consider quite how much space the vocal has to stand out on this track. And, you know, you really only get the vocals on sort of that verse section there. Just to peek behind the curtain again a second for, you know, how we prepare for this stuff. Usually when I sit down to type up my notes on the songs ahead of this stream, I'll open up a couple of tabs with the lyrics just to make sure that I get them right. I'm pretty bad at picking up lyrics generally. And, you know, I'm somebody who will fall into misheard lyric territory quite often. After hearing I Ain't Good Alone, I checked out the lyrics that were supplied by the artist, and it's actually I Ain't Getting Along.
No, it's not.
Not too dissimilar a sentiment, but it does change up the meaning fairly significantly, I think, of the song itself. Then I flick over to Genius, and I see I Ain't Good Alone on Genius, right? it's one of those Yanny Laurel type of lines now for me. Depending on what I'm looking at, that's what I see. But yeah, the lyrics that were supplied by the label say, "I ain't getting along."
It's a white and gold dress, man. Don't don't even start me on that. It's white and gold. Nah, there's no way. It's definitely I ain't good alone. There's absolutely no. I can't even hear and I ain't getting along. It's not the right sound. They might have written that down, but that's not what he says. Um, just yeah. I mean, the good thing about the vocal on this is that it is quite front and center, and there's a nice melody sort of going underneath it that really kind of draws it along. And I don't know if you found this as well, but this album sounds ultra mono to me. Like it didn't cover the stereo field like very much at all. There was guitars here and there popping out from left and right, and everything felt very very central and quite flat because of it. And it's really only the drummer's really solid, the bass player's really solid, that the track actually keeps moving. If you know what I mean. But otherwise, felt it was quite a flat opening. It was nice, but quite flat.
Yeah, and so I mentioned off the top of this that I've got secondhand experience of Dinosaur Jr. and I think immediately at the start of this track, that fuzzy intro is something that I swear I've heard on like a more laid back Green Day track or something from the Foo Fighters or countless UK bands, right? So you do get a very immediate sense of that sound. I think I would agree with you again. There's not too much kind of pulling you through outside of kind of the bass and drums getting you through. It's a really interesting song structurally. It doesn't exactly have that traditional verse chorus layout. It's just two fairly repetitive sections. There, it felt like something that you or I might write. I think. But yeah, I mean, the introduction of the more complex guitar part at different points is something that I was on board with as well. Aside from that, like you say, it's fairly static. Good opener, not a big kind of hype you up type song. Doesn't meander either, but like you say, it's just like establishing the sound.
It's not particularly memorable, is it? That's the biggest problem with this opening track, is that I don't think I could really hum you apart from it right now. Do you know what I mean? Other than the "I good," that just going on and on and on. I couldn't tell you anything else really without having written it down or having listened to this album, the billion times that I did this week, any other part of it. So that's probably the thing I'll mostly say is it's nice, it's just quite forgettable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I see it as a scene setter and maybe nothing more than that. An overture at the start of a performance. But yeah, it's funny. The one bit that I can go back to as well is "I ain't good alone," and apparently we're getting that wrong anyway. So we don't remember anything. Yeah, so we move on to the second track. I Met the Stones, where, surprise, surprise, they hark back to meeting the Rolling Stones. That's a band that he's cited as one of his biggest influences. But the intro to this song doesn't immediately make you think of the Stones, though, does it?
No, it made me think of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Weirdly. Kimamaha. Yeah, it comes in with that like really chugging riff and that kind of steady beat. That very, I mean, it's the reason it's not a Motley Crue song is because the drums aren't huge and expansive, and the guitars aren't, crystal clear left and right kind of deal. It's all again very central and quite flat, but it has that kind of, chuggy riff coming along that I Kickstart My Heart would have at the beginning, or something like that. And the drums are real steady, in that kind of Tommy Lee-esque fashion. That doesn't last for too long though. We're kind of straight back in with the 90s alt rock sound.
Yeah.
Quite often, got very, very fuzzy, open sounding power chords and little lead lines just appearing all over the place. Classic Dinosaur Jr. sort of stuff. Yeah, I just can't get over how narrow this record sounds. It really does. It sounded so. I don't know if this is because I'm not used to hearing music like this anymore. Because people these days are all about using the entire stereo field as much as possible. And it's quite unusual to hear a stripped back kind of band like this, just three members, just three instruments, very rarely straying from that setup, where it just doesn't sound, big at all in any way. And again, you got JC Masses kind of warbling over the top with his own unique style. The only thing I could really say about this is that if it was a little bit faster, it might have been a thrash song.
Yeah.
It's quite strange in that way. It's like its style is confused, but yeah.
I felt like that intro was just trying to single-handedly summon the 80s back into existence, right? It was just channeling everything into that circle. I do wonder whether this is one of the songs that they managed to get everything recorded with Kurt before lockdowns curtailed recording sessions. I mean, granted, you don't think of him and then this type of music, but I read that quote about listening to a bunch of Thin Lizzy, and I Met the Stones was a track where I thought like, yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't get that vibe so much because Lizzie to me are a 70s band. They got more of a classic rock feel, whereas this was more of a heavy metal like skin tight trousers and big hair.
No doubt. I think on that intro, definitely. I think it's more when you got into some of those lead sections and the solo work. I think that you get in a few places on this track is really good, and I think something that you will see become a bit of a theme throughout this album. There's some interesting work. So yeah, sound setup. Talk to me just really quickly as a layman here. Would you be able to describe to me what the difference between something sounding stereo and something sounding mono would be?
So I don't necessarily know if it was recorded stereo mono. Like obviously there will be certain tracks like your kick drum, guitars, and everything like that will be recorded mono. But what I sort of more mean is that when you're mixing, you tend to pan a lot of stuff out. So you have your kick, your snare, your vocals, your bass, that kind of stuff in the dead center, like kind of glue the track together. And then you'll have things like guitar left and right to a degree, synths left and right, piano, whatever comes next. Sometimes even maybe a backing vocal will be off, and you try and keep that balance. But a lot of this record, because there's only three instruments and a vocal, doesn't make sense to pan a guitar left and right because I don't think they've tracked it enough times. It'd be really unbalanced if the guitar was mostly left and there was nothing in the right channel. But it's quite unusual to experience that in music nowadays because I'm so used to hearing that stereo field used in that way. Just little incident. This is more stripped back kind of rock music than really has probably been released in the last 20 years. Even you think of the big ones like Foo Fighters or I don't know Muse or someone like that they'll use that field, and even a band like Green Day, you think traditional three piece, they've still got the piano, they've got the horns players, they've got all this stuff going on where it's just much kind of wider feeling. But this was just super narrow, and like I don't even think the cymbals were particularly panned. That all felt very flat, and it didn't sound like they had a room mic or anything like that, or separate room mics or stuff like that. It just felt like it felt very natural, like a live recording almost sort of situation, but it just didn't feel like big in that way that you get from double tracking guitars and stuff like that.
No, thanks. That's really good. And I guess my follow up there would be: do you think that might have contributed then to one of the issues that I sort of had with this track, and that was I really struggled to pick up any of the percussion elements during this song, right? I'll tell you what the moment I kind of noticed it was when when you get to the chorus section, you get a sudden, very clear sound of a pick hitting strings that you can pick up quite prominently. It took me back to kind of our discussion about that mic'd up electric guitar on the Citizen album. And it appears there. It's there for a few bars. As quickly as you hear it, it kind of disappears. I didn't think it was an acoustic guitar there, but yeah, it was at that point I kind of realized, oh God, there's some faint drums here, but I really didn't pick up anything aside from like the booming kick and snare.
It could have just been that they were quiet as well, because they are quite often just quite quiet on this. But yeah, it felt very flat. I obviously wasn't there during the recording, so I can't tell you what they used or how they mic'd up or anything. But it really did feel like there was kind of an absence of a room mic or something like that. Because that's what gives you kind of the reverb on the kick, right? You mic up all the individual pieces of your kit, but room mic will give you the bigger sound, sort of thing. Or as far as I understand it, anyway. Someone will tell me that I'm wrong, as is the nature of this. But yeah, just on that, I feel like there was a very deliberate and conscious effort here to not go down the Pro Tools route. Not have everything perfect to grid, yada yada yada. And I'll speak to him more later because it's way more obvious in later tracks. But there are things in here that are, there's 100 videos on YouTube, 5 reasons your mixes don't sound great, and they all appear here in various forms. All sorts of ways, and they're not even, particularly kind of blended and just small mistakes. They're like huge things that really confront you throughout the album, and it becomes more obvious later on, in my opinion. But yeah, you start to hear it around here.
Just one last thing I think to flag on this. They're used very sparingly, I think, across the album, but backing vocals are used relatively liberally here. I have a soft spot for any descending ahs or anything, and that does appear on the chorus section here to give it a little bit of texture. That's quite nice. But
I was too busy thinking about Key Mama Ha and completely forgot to listen to any backing vocals.
It was pretty prominent. I tell you what, if this is a track you go back and listen to again, I'm sure you'll pick it up. And I think, knowing you, I think you would really like it. It's down your street. So yeah, moving on to third track, To Be Waiting. It's an interesting song for me, I think, particularly thinking about how it kicks off. The vocals come in pretty much the moment the song starts, but they feel so, drony and low energy for the first 4 lines. Then you have that heavily distorted chord that signals changing the music. Brighter guitar joins in, and then everything seems to kick up a gear melodically with, a brighter guitar line joining in and some better vocals. But the thing is, for me, I go on a real back and forth for the first minute of this song every single time that I listen to it. I go, oh God, I hate it, to like, oh God, I love this. Oh God, I hate it. Oh God, I love this. Oh God, I hate it.
It's difficult. I mean, just first off, I'll say this intro is more of the kind of same of what we've had before on this album. It's this is a band many, many, many albums deep, and many, many years in the tooth. Is that the same? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, bang on.
yeah, long in the tooth. That's what I
Long
was
in
trying
the
to think. Yeah, and they're just in the groove of what they're doing, but it doesn't feel particularly inventive in any way. It's just kind of there, and what's the point? But there is this, things that kind of lift it, and there's a nice guitar going underneath it constantly, and riffs, because this is Dinosaur Jr. and all they know is riffs. But the thing that's most interesting about this song to me is it kind of feels like it's just split in 2 halves, right? I don't know if you got this vibe at all. It's like we're doing one thing for a while, this is kind of like, really, really nice guitar going underneath, and then you get to this long kind of bridge section, and it's like giant solos going on, and really, really nice chord progression. The kind of first hint that these guys are absolute pros at chord progression. And yeah, and then kind of back. It's quite strange in that way.
It's one of those tracks that I think we talk about sometimes, where I do feel like I'm trying to catch up a little bit, right? Things are changing all over the places. I just slow her down. Let me catch up with some of the, like, because there's some interesting ideas in there, I think, like you say, but not a great deal is developed upon. One thing that does bring me back into this track, though, is that solo, like you were saying there. And again, I've mentioned this on 2 tracks now. I'm going to say this on a few more. It's pretty consistent throughout the album. That's something that will bring me back into their songs. And yeah, they're going huge on riffs. It's pretty great. But something I don't want to go on too much about during this, but is this kind of backwards process I've gone through of noticing bands that have clearly been influenced by Dinosaur Jr. and this really may be more of the case that these two are drawing from the same spot, but so many of the solos on this album sound like something that Billy Joe Armstrong rips, particularly when he's playing live. To me, I think it makes sense again if you go back to that Thin Lizzy line, because unless I'm totally misremembering, I think it was a mutual love of Thin Lizzy between Mike Dirnt and Billy Joe that is one of the main reasons Green Day exists, full stop. But either way, whether Billy's drawing from Dinosaur Jr. or Thin Lizzy, it's something that I hear in a few of these solos.
Well, it doesn't often they don't often, get bandied around with bands like Husker Du, but when you kind of think about the sound, it is quite a similar kind of thing. Husker Du and Replacements and bands of that nature. That they Dinosaur Jr. weirdly, and I think this is Kurt Cobain's fault, get lumped in with grunge, and a few other bands who I will not mention in case I poison anyone on the stream. But they kind of they kind of get thrown in with that scene. But yeah, it makes far more sense to me that they'd be thrown in with a band like Husker Du, who obviously, as we know, are a massive influence on Green Day. And I can hear where you're coming from. The similarities are there. They're obviously very, very different bands.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But especially early Green Day, you can hear it. There's a lot of guitar solos on Plunk, and they're quite similar. I will say, as much as I love him, I don't think Billy Joe Armstrong's as good a guitar player as JC, because he is pretty great, honestly, as a riff writer, as a solo writer, really soulful, melodic. But yeah, it's I can see where you're coming from, definitely.
That's all I'm going for, man. Good. So many of these points I think I've written down. I'm just like, oh boy, is that a bit of a push? So if you can at least see where I'm coming from, that's a good start. You got anything more on To Be Waiting, or you good to move on?
No, not really. It's quite a, again, forgettable track, other than that weird kind of split down the middle kind of thing going on. That's very seamless, but yeah, otherwise quite forgettable, quite meandering, quite what is the point of this so far yet.
So let's move on to something that I hope was a little bit more memorable for you, because it certainly was more memorable for me. And that's I Ran Away. It's as I mentioned before, the first single off of Sweep It Into Space, and pretty much the reason that we're sitting here now to talk about this album. I heard this when it came out in February. I heard Kurt Weill's name attached to it as well, and I very much enjoyed this track the first time I heard it, which is why I was dying for us last week to spend the week listening to this. Did it live up to it for you?
Yes and no. It's a little less fuzzy and there's a little bit more acoustic guitar. It's got Kurt Weill all over it. Other than the fact he's not singing on it, it could have been a Kurt Weill song.
Yeah.
And he's perhaps showing his influence on the production for the first time, really, because otherwise it could have been anyone. And it's certainly on the guitar lead lines. That little lead line that goes on in the chorus, could have been off Bottle It. Really could have, kind of a B-side to that or something. And all these little intricate leads have kind of shifted from being very distinctively Dinosaur Jr. to being really distinctively Kurt Weill, which is quite an odd thing for a band to do on their own album, is to let this guy come in and have that much influence over a sound of something. I think they work together really nicely, don't get me wrong. I just, again, don't really feel like it's that memorable a song.
Oh no,
I think there's a really nice solo on it. Yeah, it's really, really melodic. It's one of the better solos on the album for me. But yeah, it's just quite forgettable. I spent quite a while trying to listen to this track over and over, see if I could kind of remember it. But other than the kind of Kurt Weill aspect of it, it just didn't really feel that memorable to me.
I I'm complete other side of the fence to you. I really am. So just to underline what you're saying, that this is clearly a track where Kurt Weill's influence sound comes through the strongest. As I say, I've heard some people talk about this album. The one thing I know for sure, and again, this is part of this fragmented recording process that they went through, but Kurt Weill did play on this track. He did produce this track. It's where he appears. Other places is a little more of a mystery. But yeah, you've got that real kind of, I guess, kind of bluegrass-esque foundation for parts of this song. You've got Dinosaur Jr.'s fuzzy brand of rock sitting on top of it, and it's a combination that just works so well for me. One of the best melodic performances from the vocals on this record, and I entirely disagree about the catchiness for this. The chorus is so damn catchy. It blasts everything else from the album in the earworm of the week competition out of the water. I'm not ashamed to admit that I have spent so much of this week walking through different rooms in my house just going, I ran away, do do do. Yeah, easily best song in the album for me, and that's by a large margin. Yeah.
It's a hard disagree from me on that one. I think that's much better could come later.
Genuinely, I think with I Ran Away, if I had hated all 11 other tracks, and I certainly didn't, but damn, if I did, it all would have been worth it for me to listen to this song as many times this week as I did.
Don't get me wrong, I didn't feel like it was a bad song in any way, shape, or form. And it was quite catchy, but it just wasn't. Again, I don't want to keep saying it because I've said it every track so far, but I just left the feeling like I like to come away from music like feeling like there was a point to that track, and if it is just that it's super catchy, I'm fine with that. As we say every week, huge fans of the likes of Dua Lipa, and I can't say there's a lot of point to our music other than it's grooving and ridiculously catchy, right? So I don't have a problem with that in any way. It's just it wasn't catchy enough to be kind of warranting that place. It wasn't kind of grooving enough to be warranting that place. The riffs aren't good enough to be kind of earning that place. And the only really distinct thing is how nice the solo is. And am I going to go back to a song because of the solo? Probably not. I mean, there's bands I will, but I just don't feel like this band is a band where I'd go back for the solo.
It's a good solo though, man.
It is a good solo. I can't deny that. It's a banging, ripping solo. I would have been quite proud to write that one myself if I could play guitar as well as he could. But yeah, no problems with the solo. Just the rest of the song, just kind of. I mean, that's the standout. There's only one song in the world, "Drink," that I feel like the solo stands out for the best part, and I still love the rest of the song as well. And that's "Soma" by the Smashing Pumpkins. Cheers. It's not that good, basically.
I think that's probably where our dividing line is on this. I think we both agree that the solo is great, but I still feel like it's catchy enough for me to come back to it. There's enough there to dig into that I go back to it, and yeah, I'm sure I will.
I will say it's worth noting as well that with Dinosaur Jr. in the past, I've heard them on multiple occasions. I remember hearing "Feel the Pain" about 1,000 times before it kind of clicked with me that this is actually a really good song kind of thing. So it might be well the case in 15 years' time. It'll take that long. I'll go back to this song like, this is a bit of a banger. That's Dinosaur Jr. for you. I feel.
I expect you to reach out to me at that point in time. No matter what happens between now and then, and say, yeah, no, you were right. I'll wait for that day. Yeah, so we're on to Garden next. What have you got for Garden?
It's the first real change of pace for me. Almost a ballad kind of thing. You got some really nice melody and slower, and some really solid guitar work. Written and sung by the bassist I was reading. I had to look this up because I was like, well, this voice is distinctively different.
Yeah.
Who sung this? And it's not Kurt Weill, and it's not JC Macy Massis, whatever you call it, however his name says. So it
I've
was written by
stopped saying
Nirvana.
his name at this point. I've just stopped saying it. I get to it in my notes, and I'm just like, the Dinosaur Jr. man.
Yeah. So last week the basketball man. um, no, I mean, I kind of started to wonder whether the bassist Lou Barlow had a less distinct but more palatable and more mainstream voice, and kind of one where people would probably feel less strongly about it either way, but might get them more radio play. And that's why I'm wondering if they. I'm surprised. I've not heard him on a Dinosaur Jr. show. I know he left for a long time and only came back when they reformed, but he's got a really nice voice. It sounded really good, and it was one of the first points where I was like, oh, okay, this vocal was really, really nice. It's quite uplifting. It's grand. It builds really nice, and it's just all round quite pretty. And then we get to the solo towards the end, and the fuzz tone is interesting, but it is mixed horribly.
Yeah.
And I have no bones about saying that. It sounds horrible. It just jumps out, and then it feels out of the place again. And there's this big myth not to use compression amongst a lot of musicians because the musician should control their dynamics and the fingers, but you could just hear it when it's not there, and it's too dynamic. It's far too dynamic. It dips out when it shouldn't. It jumps out when it shouldn't. It just doesn't sound good, and it kind of ruins what would have been a really good song for me.
So, yeah, a couple of tracks on this album where they do switch up there. Whenever I've read about it, prior to this stream, right, it did almost sound like it was a negotiation thing. Like he gets 2 songs every album, and this was terms of him coming back or something like this. Really, really interesting as well. There's a lot said about kind of Dinosaur Jr.'s reformation and everything like that, and about rebuilding old relationships and things. There's some great stories I think out there that are worth digging into and taking a look at, because it's just speaking to how you go about trying to mend a relationship like that ended so messily. Yeah, and coming back to Garden, this track actually brought me right back to something, and I think there's some obvious allusions that can be made to a sound not too dissimilar from the Pixies or the Cure, but stylistically and the vibe from this track actually took me somewhere completely else. And that was back to the early 2000s, in the back of my parents' old red Isuzu Rodeo 4x4 being driven around southern Wisconsin. They always had the radio on in the car. And while sometimes it would be talk radio that was on, I can't tell you, dude, just how much Rush Limbaugh I ended up hearing growing up. And I will, just before you say anything, jump to my parents' defense and say that wasn't how they were politically inclined. It was just who was on the syndicated networks at the time. But yeah, if it wasn't talk radio that was on, it was 101.5 WYBA Madison. A local heritage rock station. Now, this is one of those stations that just constantly played the same songs whenever they were on air. And I will say, when we went back over to Wisconsin for our honeymoon a couple of years ago, they were playing the exact same playlist 15 years on. Nothing had changed. It was great. But it was all Counting Crows, it was Goo Goo Dolls, it was Bare Naked Ladies. And that radio station is the reason why, growing up, for me, my indisputable favorite song was Semisonic's Closing Time. For me, Garden sounds like Dinosaur Jr. hooked up a microphone, pointed it at the WIBA playlist, and pressed record. You've got everything from those songs on there. There's a Counting Crows kind of esque melody to it. There's a guitar tone that's nigh on identical to the one on Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. There's even a section of vocals that goes double time, like the majority of 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies, right? So yeah, I have a soft spot for Garden. I really have nothing to say about the substance of it musically. But we talk about music is an experience sometimes, and it was just very strange hearing all of these elements together, that it's just like I can construct this moment from this song that's from 2020, 2021. Take me back there. It was, yeah, no, very enjoyable.
No, that's awesome, honestly, because yeah, music is an experience, and as much as I like to sit there and complain about the lack of compression on a fuzzy guitar solo, you had a completely different.
I'm sitting there
You know,
flashing back to my
yeah.
childhood and everything like that.
Yeah, and I'm just there like, God damn it, mix properly. You're professionals. Come on. This is not okay. Unfortunately, I was not transported to Wisconsin. I was transported to, having a horrible experience in my ear because of that. Loved the song otherwise, honestly. And it's, I didn't pick up on the Goo Goo Dolls thing or any of the other kind of early 2000s bands that all could have been interchangeable as far as I was concerned.
I think that, yeah, they all are.
But I can kind of hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the calling, the feeling, I don't know, they're all the something or something. The songs, you know how it goes.
It was bizarre. I think I wouldn't have been able to pick those bands out had I not had that out of body experience and just suddenly been back there and trying to track down repressed memories while I'm there. Just like, is there anything I need to deal with from my childhood? No, we're good. I just like music. Great.
Probably all the amount of Rush Limbaugh you had to listen to.
Well, yeah, there you go.
I'd say RIP, but I don't want to.
We could do what that other Twitch streamer did, where he broke the news of Rush Limbaugh's death on his stream to his followers, and then he was just like, "This is going to be a respectful place. This is just a time for all of us to, recognize that another human being has died." And all the time in the background, the video for Crab Rave is playing, and he's just like, "I'm terribly sorry. I don't know how to stop this." It just do 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 do. Yeah. Look, let's.
Okay, we don't have the budget, but
I'll act it out instead. So we'll move on from the sound of early 2000s Wisconsin radio and sounds that destroy your eardrums, and we'll move on to hide another round and the unmistakable sound of I think 90s Seattle at the intro. Song doesn't actually stay there long, does it, Cam?
No, you get back up to speed here right away. It's a really fun intro, actually. It's like, very head bobby kind of situation you find yourself in. I love the guitar work on this. It's like kind of swinging in and out, dipping in and out and coming back. Really, really lifts the song, gives it a lot of movement, which I really love. But I'm going to come back to it, and I hate myself for this, but for the love of God, will the engineer learn how to use crossfades? Because you can hear a pop every time that guitar comes out, or a click, or something horrible.
Oh, no.
And it ruins that. I don't know if I had bad headphones, man. I was listening to some bad headphones or something like that, but I could just, every time that guitar dipped out, it clicked, or it popped, or I could hear it noticeably drop out, and it felt like they were just cutting it out and not, either automating it or crossfading it. And I don't want to get too technical because, that's what music's about and all that, but come on, man, it's 2021. It's a click of a button. Like, just do it. And I get you want this raw sound and everything, but it's so off-putting to the track. It's got to be deliberate for a kind of raw live feel. Almost going for that sort of tape vibe. I don't know if it was recorded on tape or anything like that. Yeah, chorus and melody's great. Another great solo. But nothing I haven't heard before. Really fun song all in all. Just really off-putting, these kind of mixing choices for me at this point. They're getting more noticeable, they're getting louder, and they're getting, more in the way of good music, basically.
So it's interesting. I mean, I've found myself, as I've started to learn more about music production, and we've gone through this mixing mastering process and everything, and trying to look out for pops, clicks, etc. Realizing that it's not something that I've ever kind of noticed in music. So, figuring that, like, I guess any music that eventually makes its way to my ears has had enough of a fine tooth comb through it that that's all been smoothed out by the time that it gets to me. I didn't pick up on it here. And I that now makes me question whether it's like, even if it was there, would I notice it? If I'm not sitting there listening through a track with a very clear tick box of the things that I am listening to on this, just like make sure there's no pops, make sure this is here, make sure this is here, and all that stuff, would I actually notice that? Yeah, so it wasn't something I picked up on. I'm kind of with you here. There one of my notes is, we get another solid solo, but I then wrote down it that's par for course at this point, and I find myself thinking that there's a lot of this album that I would consider just around par, right? Um, Filler, I think, is an unfair word for Hide Another Round, but it's not exactly a song that blows me away. Um, it might be more of a symptom of the last two tracks being such a positive experience for me, and then this track not exactly being filled with, pure imagination. But this is one of those tipping points for me that I think we talk about most weeks, where it's just like, ooh, could we be going over here?
It's really difficult to say a lot about a song like this, and it's not a great thing for us to be saying, sat here trying to talk about a song like this. You know, what can you say? We've heard the riffs, we've heard the all the stuff. I mean, I will say it's got nice movement to it, and it's probably one of the better examples of that on this track. Sorry, on this album. But yeah, other than that, it's meandering again, and like I've said to you just now, I'm getting so off put by the kind of mixing choices and everything like that. And I think you're right to point out that maybe you wouldn't notice it if you hadn't got a checklist, and maybe I wouldn't if I hadn't gone through the process of very recently mixing our album and happening to list alpha every time that I'd cut my guitar off too early, and mastering engineer Brad is sending it back to me going, yeah, it pops here. I'm like, oh, I've got to get rid of that then because you don't want pop. I don't know if I would necessarily be listening out for that normally, but it was just really obvious to me here. I just found it off-putting. And the tone isn't always nice as well. It kind of feels like it was just plug in and play, and whatever comes out comes out. We're anti-Pro Tools, and we're an old school band that does it naturally with tape because that's better, objectively. Is it when your album sounds like this? Is it better? Had to have a flat kind of horribly fizzy, popping, clicking, uncompressed album.
It goes back to what we were talking about on Garden, though, doesn't it? And because I didn't pick up on some of those issues, I then went and had that experience with that track, and it's just like, this sounds like something that was on the radio when I was growing up and stuff like that. So I think there's something to be said about songs that remind you of a time and a place, and production value does play a part in that. You can listen to any band that's got a 20-30 year plus catalog and realize just how different something that's recorded today sounds to something that even that kind of like 2000s or into the 90s, 80s, etc. It's a tough one. I mean, if it's something like that, then as you say, potentially inexcusable. But
the difference for me being, man, one of my favorite albums of all time is the Velvet Underground and Nico. That album, which I've forgotten the name of, Banana album, can't remember, whatever. Great album, must be that good, I can't remember the name. And it's, by today's standards, the production's not great, but it still sounds good. That's the difference for me here. You can have production choices that make your music sound old or give it this feel or vibe, but there's 30-year-old music that doesn't have horribly fizzy guitar tone or really flat, horrible sounding drums. Maybe music from the 50s or something like that, but it just feels like the choices here are holding it back in a way that's unnecessary. You can send natural raw on tape, live, that kind of stuff, and not have horrible guitar tone, like unpleasant guitar tone or things like that. There are ways to do it, and I get that people want to make choices, they want to sound more this way, and that's great because I want to sound that way too sometimes. You know, I don't like programmed drums much. You have to use them because don't always have space for a live drummer, etc. But it's where the line is for me, and I just don't think they get the balance right here at all. In a lot of places, really.
Well, okay. I'd say what. Let's move on to the 7th track, "And Me," and we are back to something a little more upbeat. I haven't spoken a great deal about the vocal performance on this album to this point. We mentioned a little bit off the top about Jay's style, and he certainly has his style. I don't think it's bad, but perhaps not something to really write home about too. I saw a review actually from someone where they described themselves from track 3 onwards as being, quote, as bored with this album as he sounds on it, which I think is a bit strong. But what really intrigues me is that on a track like "And Me," where it really injects, that style does inject some energy in through a bit of strain, versus some of the earlier songs where they're a little more mellow. And really, you could put takes back to back. Takes back to back from a couple of these tracks, and the vocal performance probably wouldn't sound that different, right? But I thought on "And Me," you still did get a little bit of energy despite no real stylistic change.
I think you could put a lot of the album tracks on this album back to back, take to take, and you wouldn't be able to tell that the song had changed, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was expecting them to kind of, after 30 years at this point, how many ever years they've been a band, probably closer to 40 by this point. 84,
Yeah.
I think, was they
Yeah,
formed.
yeah.
But yeah, why they're just suddenly expecting them to, completely change midway through an album, but it's quite tiring by this point. Like the review said, I don't necessarily think I was bored by this point, but he does have this style where he sounds like he'd rather be doing anything else. And that's his style, and it's always been that way. It's enjoyable in places. It can be a little grindy other places. But yeah, just a little bit of variation would have been nice at some point, like around here, because again, I feel like other than Garden, we've heard the same song what 5, 6, 7 times before now. I'm not even sure what number track this is, but
Track 7, and I'll put "I Ran Away" in there too. So
yeah, yeah. I hate to do this, but the main standout for me in this song was that damn hi hat in the chorus. And if you didn't hear it, you're lying to me because it sounded like a steam vent going off every 3 seconds, and it was horrible. And I have no idea why anybody would want to listen to that. Again, you've got a nice solid track here. Like, it's not a great thing. It's a little bit boring, but if you just took this as a standalone track, it's fine. But then you go and ruin it by just having this horror, psh, psh, just like right in your ear, and it's I just don't understand it. I really don't. I'm kind of exasperated actually listening to it like for the third, fourth time. I was like, why did they think that this was a good sound or a good thing? It's way too high. It's not pleasant to listen to. It doesn't suit the song in any way, and it makes you forget about everything. I'm half wondering if half of these songs are so forgettable because they make such weird choices like that to have something stand out in that way that I'm kind of just focused on that for that entire song. I don't really get it.
Well, hey, look, I picked up on that hi-hat sound. Let's take something maybe a little more positive, that I took away from this song. And there's been a few places on the album where the backing vocals have stood out a little bit to me. Generally, it feels like they aren't something that are utilized that often on this record, but just on occasion, and maybe the album would have benefited from more because when they are there, like they are on this track, they work. Another thing as well, I love that manic acoustic guitar on this track. By the way, it sounds really nice. And just adds another level, I think, another little bit of texture there.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's some great melody there. There's really great melody there. There's some more really solid guitar work. Again, not reinventing the wheel, not doing anything new that they haven't done before, but it's all quite nice. It's just they seem to keep making these choices that I don't know if it's a personal slight against me because they knew I was going to be listening to this, but that's what it began to feel like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it was like a personal mission to annoy the listener, go out of your way to make these choices that, I mean, fair play, it makes it stand out, but I just don't think it's in a good way, honestly.
Well, we head on to I Expect It Always, track 8. Now, I said back when we were talking about Hide Another Round that it wasn't fair to call that song filler. Do you think that it's an accusation that maybe could be thrown at I Expect It Always?
No.
Okay.
No, I will get the negative out of the way first. That is an unpleasantly fuzzy intro. The guitar tone is horrible. The riff could be nice, but it's just masked under way too much fuzz. Like, it's really fizzy. It doesn't sound pleasant. Aside from that, the chord progression in the song is incredible. I love the chord progression. I love the way that it transforms from verse to chorus, from chorus back to verse. It is absolutely seamless. These guys are pros at that. And the melody that accompanies it is absolute masterclass in melody writing. Is really good, and this is the first time in the album, I think, for me, where I was like, okay, this is really nice, and there's nothing getting in the way, nothing annoying me. This is just really, really nice. Again, going back to the mixing, there's a lot of pops and cracks in those vocals. There's a lot of B's and P's that are really popping out and they're not dealt with, and I'm just like, why? Like, I get you want a live thing, but nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody's ever said, "Oh yeah, I really like that song because of the p on it." I just don't get that choice. Like,
We spent a
you know,
long time working on that, didn't we?
I still couldn't get them all out. Yeah, it's difficult, but this doesn't even sound like they tried. I will say I could listen to this guy play guitar all day though. I really could. He's a great riff writer and just consistently great solos for every track. And really, yeah, the riffs on this one really stood out for me. In comparison to the rest of this album, not in the canon of Dinosaur Jr. from what I've heard. But yeah, on this album, they really stood out for me. So no, I don't think it's for that. I think it was a
Right
good
on.
song.
Well, I'll give you the case for the defense then, and I will say off the top, I don't want to be uncharitable, I really don't, but I think this is just a symptom of what you were talking about on the last track, and that's the music to me didn't feel like anything new. If I go back to our Spirit of the Beehive album review, and review. We don't do reviews. Music's not sports. If we go back to our Spirit of the Beehive album discussion, on the
I
other
feel like I'm
hand,
doing a production review tonight.
um, if we go back to that, right? And again, another album that I think I was thinking about when you were talking through, like, why would you just have this sound come through? It's like I seem to remember that being something you picked up on there too. But we all hit a point where we were saying on that album, there's nothing on this track that we haven't heard before, right? And I think with that album, I got through it because there was some interesting concepts going around. There were some interesting elements. There was the use of the fucking kettle, right? Whereas with this album, the elements are the same things that we have heard for over 30 years of rock music, and it really does make it easier for me to disengage. Whereas, as I say, something like Spirit of the Beehive or New Long Like by Dry Cleaning, I stuck with it because it was something that was new and original, even if we were getting to track 8 and it's just like, there's nothing new here because you're at track 8 of an album, right? There's only so much that you can do throughout that entire process. It I think it's just that fact that it exacerbates it for me, and I will say, and I will flag up now, my interest has really started to wane here at Track A.
So this is the first time we've taken on a classic band, really,
Yeah.
I think. And maybe we could talk to the symptom of writing an album in the first place. It's difficult to write a cohesive sounding album that is varied enough from track to track to keep everybody interested throughout the whole thing. We've been through that recently. It's very difficult to do and to keep it cohesive. And then on top of that, you've got a band that's been playing for 40 years anyway. Like, what new can you bring to, can three guys bring in the room after 40 odd years? I don't know. I've never been in that situation. Maybe we will be one day, but it's hard to say. It just feels like that. I wonder if at this point they brought in Kurt Vile to kind of inject something new, but doesn't really feel like he's had that much input on it. There's that one very Kurt Vile sounding track, but otherwise, that not a lot else going on that would make me scream Kurt Vile. So yeah, it is what it is. It's a band, into their 40th year that probably isn't writing music as stellar as they used to. And we go through this a lot. I'm a huge Drink, Smashing Pumpkins fan. Is new Smashing Pumpkins records, is it Melancholy? Is it Siamese Dream? No. With big Green Day fans, are they ever going to write American Idiot again? No, they're going to give you Father of All, right? So yeah, so it's just that kind of thing. It's hard to keep up these great genre-defining classic albums after all these years, and
Yeah.
guys got to make a living, I guess. I don't know how much money they've made in their career. I'd imagine quite a bit, but they've got to keep doing something. As Nelson said, got to nuke something.
You've completely thrown me now. I think my few points I will make. That last Smashing Pumpkins album was really good. Really good.
No lie there. It was a banger.
It wasn't genre defining by any doubt, by any stretch of the imagination. But I need more goth disco in my life. Sparingly, I think, actually, probably. But yeah, there you go. And yeah, we had this conversation a little bit around Father of All, because big Green Day fans, and it was just that. It's like, have we just reached the point now where they're writing albums, either to have something to do, or are they just doing what's fun for them at this point? I really don't. Oh God, I don't know. Do I want to say that? Yeah, I don't think Father of All was fun for anybody, but it's.
What do you mean? No Swedish producers? That wasn't fun for you?
Oh, bruh. But yeah, I mean, okay. I think I got that sense with this album. I wouldn't say that this is. I wouldn't say that Sweeping Into Space, and I'll say this now. I'm probably not going to be, particularly kind when we get to the end of this discussion. But I don't think it's their Father of All, even not knowing a great deal of their catalog. There's a lot of good stuff here. I want to pick up on that Kurt Vile point as well. I wrote this down in my notes for the next track, but I feel like as soon as you brought this up, it's probably a good time to mention it. But like, that was the thing that drew me to this album, right? Was, and I guess that's a bad thing, because of course it's going to be a Dinosaur Jr. album first and foremost. Kurt Vile is producing this. But, you really realize when you start getting into this point that, and I tell you what, why don't we transition over to Take It Back? Because on Take It Back, you do get a couple of those, bluesgrassy or like those Kurt Vile inspired moments on this track, but it reminds me that, again, this is what I came to this album for. But we haven't had any of that since I Ran Away coming through particularly strongly.
This actually took me by surprise a little bit, this song. There's some nice piano pop from Dinosaur Jr.
Plinky piano.
Yeah, I was quite taken aback, but suits him quite well as a vocalist, I think, to kind of, I've used the word before, but warble type of track. And yeah, I thought it was quite nice. Again, it's just absolutely ruined for me by that horrible fizzy guitar over the top of the piano. Why was it there? It didn't need to be. There was no point to it. It would have been it actually would have been a really great song without that in there. But again, it's just so off-putting. It's amazing to me how one small instrument change, and it's not a weird instrument. It's not like they, went and picked out an erhu or something like that and thought we'll bring that in, a la Spirit of the Beehive. But it's amazing how much a piano, just very standard instruments like that, can completely change the whole vibe of an album for me, from being really stale at this point to the point where I do, can I even make it through these last 4 tracks, to being again something of interest. The melody's cool. There's little lead lines over the chorus melody, which is great, and it's just all gotten a lot better because of the introduction of something slightly different to what we've heard 8 times before. Again, there's issues with the mix. I hate that fizzy guitar at the beginning. It is one of the worst guitar tones I think I've ever heard. I try not to be clickbaity on these and say things like, it's the worst thing ever. Oh my god, it's so bad. It's just, I couldn't get over it. I was listening to it like, who put that in? Who thought that sounded good? You know what I mean? I don't even think it's that subjective. It just does not sound good. It's not a pleasant sound. And again, there's all these pops and clicks in the vocal that suddenly started appearing in the last couple of tracks. Why? But it's just a great change of pace, especially when it comes into the bridge and it sounds bigger again and it's slowed all down, and it kind of sounds more spacey. For a song for an album that's called "Sweep It Into Space" is a very non-spacey sounding album.
It's the thing, man.
Yeah.
It's not spacey here on Earth, but as soon as you sweep it into space, man, damn.
Yeah,
Son.
this kind of does sound like what an album would sound like if you recorded it in space and not in a space station.
So what you're saying?
Don't quote me on the science there.
What you're saying is they probably should have gotten a few more people in to talk about this record or something, because they recorded it in a vacuum.
I might as well have done. No, again, I don't want to focus on these things because it was a good song. I really enjoyed it, and I loved hearing JC Massis, like in this kind of context, because I thought it really suited him, like even possibly more so than kind of riffy guitar rock kind of stuff. But yeah, just why make those choices? Why have those things?
Can I
ruin a good song? Sorry, yeah, you go.
No. So I was gonna say, can I just briefly derail us with something, just very briefly?
Always.
You said riffy, right? Instantly, I had in my head, is there any chance that we could start a cover band and just call it like Riffy Clyro, and just do like some super amped up versions of Biffy Clyro songs?
I'm not a big Biffy Clyro fan.
We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, on Take It Back. Let's just run back to that piano very quickly, and I think it's used really interestingly. Here, you get all of the focus on it as the track opens up, but then it slips back into a supporting role as soon as those vocals kick in. It's repeating the same melody until we get to the next section where it changes up with the rest of the music, stays in that support role, vocals drop back away again, and the focus is all on the piano. There were parts of that melody that I didn't think were particularly interesting, but it was something different, and that's what I was talking about on the last couple of tracks. I wanted something different, and yeah, taking out one of your guitar parts, replacing that with a piano instead, because I think it was fulfilling a very similar role there. That's something different.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say with the melody, like I'd describe it as nice. It was nice, but it's not special. But sometimes nice is cool. You like a nice little melody, catchy little melody. And it doesn't need to be much more than that, because you're so taken aback by, wow, they're actually doing something different at this point, that it doesn't need much more than that.
I was taken aback on Take It Back at around the 2 minute mark when I thought for a brief second that we were gonna go a bit all like meatloaf power ballad for a second. But no, you do end up just falling back into the same old formula that I think we're expecting at this point after that little break there. But yeah, I mean, the addition of the extra guitar jamming along with the vocal melody is pretty welcome in the second half of this song. Something to lift it up. I've already spoken about. You don't get a great deal of kind of backing vocals.
Can I just stop you there? Did you move on to a song? Because you cut out for me briefly, and I couldn't tell whether you were talking about a different song.
No, I didn't. I'm still talking about Take It Back.
Oh Lord.
So
Sorry,
fun thing, you broke up slightly for us on this end at the start. We just about got what you were saying when you were doing your first big spiel about Take It Back. But then I was just watching in awe at the fact that your video and your audio had desynced, and I was preparing to just very quietly say to you, why don't you switch off your camera and put it back on? But then you caught up with yourself right at the very end of the speech. So make sure you watch that one back on our recorded version. And
That must have been quite a sight.
it was a lot of fun, man. It was hypnotic. So if we go on to Ensei next, I kind of get the impression that Ensei is one of those songs that's best listened to in like an old muscle car or a convertible or the like, driving down a stretch of road, preferably probably in the desert somewhere. But that's just mostly thanks to that intro.
I just got to get this off my chest, and I don't know if Dinosaur Jr. did this deliberately, but every time I saw this song written down, all I thought about was NSYNC.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? The Dinosaur Jr. tried to subconsciously make me think about NSYNC and Justin Timberlake for some reason.
Even at Miage.
Yeah, even at Viage and all that. Yeah, Muscle Car. Yeah. Yeah, I will say the guitar sounds so much bigger and better here, and that riff and chord progression are absolutely incredible. It's so catchy, and probably one of the first truly memorable moments on the album for me. Yeah, that extra texture then comes into the chorus and just lifts it again, and I'm so frustrated because I'm like, this was here all along. Why did you just not make the rest of your record sound like this, or have these, bigger sounds? And I don't even know necessarily whether it's a better song than what we've been offered up before, but it just sounds better. It's mixed better. The production's better. It's you said, the I can't remember what track you were talking about when you said it's definitely the earworm on this album. But for me, this was the biggest earworm on the album. It was by far the best track so far. The tone's consistent, and the drums and bass never sound better than when they do on this track. Yeah, it feels for the first time like you're actually being taken along with the song, not just dragged along with it. Like, oh, here we go, forced along. You're actually there with it, wanting to listen to it.
Dude, you and I talk about our hive mind every now and then. Once again, this has been proven not to be the case tonight. This is another song that chalks up as a bit of a disappointment for me. I pick up on a lot of the things that you're talking about. The verse really teases something melodic here, particularly the last couple of notes to it, right? Chorus comes in straight after that, but it doesn't come close to resolving what you expect. Instead, to me, it was just almost flatter than the verses, vocally at the very least, if not musically. And it just felt like something unfulfilled to be. You felt like it was unfulfilled for a different reason, looking at this track and thinking this could have been there the whole time. I just felt like you just needed to push that a little bit more, and there could have been something really great here.
I wholeheartedly disagree, man. Honestly, it just felt like everything was super amped up on this song. I started to wonder if this was, a real inspired bit of track listing to put this just after, the piano song, Take It Back. Because it just lifts so much, and, it's got that super nice melodic soulful solo, which for me is the best on the album by far. yeah, I loved this one. I really did. I was so almost ready to give up on this album and kind of just fake it through the last three tracks while we were doing our discussion, and relying on you and Brad to carry it because I was just almost so done. But then this came along, and I was like, whoa, where did this come from? This is awesome, and I wanted more of it, and I wish they'd gone down this route earlier. Honestly, I feel like a lot of people will switch off before they hit this track, and might never get to hear it, but they really should because it is really, really a great track.
That's really funny because I mean those feelings that you described running up to this track, certainly things that I had felt as well. We got to this track, that didn't change for me. I did persevere through the last couple. Don't worry, I'm not sitting here. And yeah, we would have been SOL tonight if either of us did that because it's just like, it's fine. We'll just rely on Brad. Brad can't make it. Fuck. All right. We'll move on to Walking to You, track 11. And I'm gonna go a little bit off piste again as we get onto it here. And all week I've had the nagging feeling like this song reminds me of another band, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I was really racking my brains and think I'd narrowed it down to the vocal performance and melody being the thing that sounded a bit familiar, particularly in the bridge section where you get that extra added distortion added in for free, where, that bit where, they do actually say "Sweeping into Space," the album title appears in the lyrics. It bothered me all week because I couldn't work it out. And lo and behold, probably just like half an hour before this stream, it clicked with me. It reminds me of a Violent Soho track. And I know it reminds me of it. I still can't absolutely put my finger on why. The only thing, if I'm coming to it, that I can think is like I'm half executing a hey 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 to close out some of the lines on the vocals.
It's a great shout because it's off their new album, and I know exactly the track you mean. Violent Soho, great Aussie band. If nobody's ever listened to them, one of my absolute favorites. I was supposed to go see them 2 years ago now, but the Rona got in the way, which was gutting because they never tour in England, and I thought I'd actually finally get a chance to, see them play Covered in Chrome live, which is an absolute all-time classic for me. But you're absolutely right, and it didn't twig with me until you just said it, and it was just suddenly like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, hold on, did Dinosaur Jr. rip off the band that's ripping off all the '90s bands? That's very odd, and you're right. It's exactly the same melody, or at least in my head, it's exactly the same melody. I've got the record, so I'm going to put it on after now just to double check. Maybe someone in chat could tell me the song I'm thinking of, although they would have had to listen to this album, which I doubt they did. I was thinking of one very specific person. Anyway, yeah, sorry, just getting back to this track, not getting too far into the Violent Soho thing, although much as I'd love to spend 2 hours talking about Violent Soho. This again is just much better for me. The drums suddenly feel like they've come to life. They felt like they were life support before, and now all of a sudden they're there. They're very present, and the drummer, real solid drum work early in the album, but just the sound of it was flat, and they just sound bigger here. There's more space. It takes up more room. It has room to breathe. It just does so much for the song and for the record. We're ending really strong here. The last two tracks for me have been really, really strong tracks. These guys know how to write an engaging melody. They've proved that throughout this album. Maybe engaging is a little bit too far, but they know how to write a good, nice melody. And when you combine it with all those other things, it makes it a really great track. It's just a shame for me it took till 10 and 11 to get to this point. Yeah, I could do without that kind of fizzy lead synth in the bridge. But by this point, I'm so jaded by bad mixing choices that I don't care that much about it. That it doesn't bother me that much. I'd prefer it if it wasn't there, but again, it's nice that they're trying something slightly different and adding an extra texture. Yeah. The big chorus is just huge, it's ripping. I think this would be a really, really good live song.
So yeah, longest track on the album, not by much. We're at 4 minutes 40 with this. We get a few over 4 minutes on this album. I did mistake it for being the closer on a couple of listens because it does have that sort of one last big blast feeling that you would get from an album like this as it was closing. But, that's a horrible thing to write down. I said, but honestly, based on my comments on the last few tracks, that might have just been wishful thinking.
I missed the thing that was horrible to write down. You cut out for me again, so you could have said anything there. I'm hoping
no,
it was okay.
no, no. No, I said, because I thought that this might have, I would mistake this for the closer sometimes because you have got that build. I think it's, a good song, but I said, yeah, I may have just been making that mistake through wishful thinking because of my feelings on some of the previous tracks.
I had the same vibe, but only because they, kind of name checked the title of the album. So I was, okay, this is going to be the closer. This is where they say the name of the movie in the not wishing to make a Family Guy reference. I don't know,
yeah,
whatever,
bang on.
Yeah.
I am Superman 2, The Return of Superman, or whatever.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, this is going to be the end of the album, but it wasn't. And as I'll go on to say in a minute, I was very, very glad it wasn't.
So yeah, let's move on to the actual closer then. You Wonder, and take us home here, Cam.
We got a stripped back kind of intro for this one, and this to me just sounds like an instant classic. It really, really does. Again, we got like a change of vocalist here. It's much more mainstream and much more palatable again. It's really, really nice. The progression combined with the melody is unreal. Composition wise, this is the peak of the album for me. They really saved the best for last. The dynamic shifts are super sweet as well. When I think Dinosaur Jr. and I think of Green Mind, it's so dynamic in terms of song structure. It's loud, soft. It's fast. It's slow. It's all over the place. Whereas this was all very one tempo all the way throughout. And on this on this song, that all changes. And they haven't really offered up the slow fast thing before, and it makes a huge difference when they do to the way this album feels to me. I could honestly listen to that pre-chorus into the chorus over and over and over again. I thought it was that good. This is probably the one for me that if I was a playlist kind of guy, which I'm not, as we've discussed many times before, this would be the one that goes into my playlist because it's just so ridiculously catchy. It's not a huge song for the outro, but honestly, it's the most distinct and memorable song for me. Having said that, I don't like the lead tone. It's horrible. It's fizzy. And it just would have been a much better album if they hadn't made those choices. But yeah, most of this track is just absolutely incredible for me.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here.
We got there eventually.
So like you say, the vocals they change over and they pick up significantly here. You end up waltzing through a vocal melody, which almost sounds like Chris Cornell-esque at times. Given the performance on the rest of the album, it just comes as such a pleasant surprise here. I do wish that we didn't have to wait for the last track to get warmed up like this, really. It's, maybe a touch ballady in places, so, a deviation for the rest of the album. It's strange because we're just closing out, but, I think if you view it in isolation, it is a really good way to close out the album strongly. I catch myself wishing that it had maybe dropped in earlier to break up some of these other tracks that it's just like, but again, we maybe would have been going at this point, whatever track you change up there and you move down. I don't know. You probably could have moved the last one to be a closer.
To me, yeah, that's what I was going to say. To me, it would have made sense to end on Walking to You and have this to break up the monotony of what was the middle of this album, from pretty much track 4 to track 10. That was wasted time for me, and if this song had maybe been in the middle, I would have felt differently about a lot of those songs there. But it's the choice they went with, and to live or die by that.
Absolutely. And as you say, I think the thing that I go back to, and I think we spoke about this a little bit with the Conway record as well. There were some things that I think he clearly wanted you to come away from the album with. So he left that to the last track. As you say, this is your most memorable track on the album. Not mine, but that's just because I got a sweet spot in my heart for the lead single there. But, I think there's an argument about, if you want to give your listener a lasting impression or something like that, something they take away, leave it to the last one. As you were saying with some of the previous songs as well, let's just hope that they haven't switched off at this point. But it's a really good song, really really good one.
That's my worry though, is that you can save the best for last, rather than going the crescendo route or the soft slow outro or whatever. But yeah, many people are going to be listening by that point, because I think even the most ardent Dinosaur Jr. fan, and for some reason I found out earlier I am in a Dinosaur Jr. fan group on Facebook. No idea why. I actually went to look at my Jeff Rosenstock one and saw that it was there. I was like, that's weird. Don't know why I'm in that, but anyway, yeah, I think even that group would probably have a hard time with the middle section of this album.
I'm interested now. I want you to come back on our YouTube comments on this video, and I want you to just drop some of the takes from the Dinosaur Jr. Sweep It Into Space discussion, and see what side they came out on. I know you sometimes get some different takes from fan groups, having been a member of many militant ones throughout my life. But let us not go into that deep, dark period, and let's instead move on to our sum-up discussion. Cam, what are you thinking?
What am I thinking? I'm thinking that if they'd cut out 5 songs from this album, it might have been a great album, but there's just too much filler in the middle. Too many bad mixing choices, in my opinion. Again, you always have to say that mixing is an art, and there's no one way to do it. Everybody can make their own choice and yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. But just to me, it was just so wrong in so many places. It sounded so bad. I'm left quite disappointed, to be honest with you, because they're one of those bands, Dinosaur Jr., where I really want a Dinosaur Jr. record that is one I love. I don't know why. They just just a band like that where you want one of their records in your kind of regular rotation, because they are a classic, and a name and all that sort of stuff. So I was hoping this was going to be it. It's just not. There's songs I might go back to, but honestly, I think I might still forget about them, even in the grand scheme of things. I think I'd like to try and remember the last song, because it was a really enjoyable experience listening to that, but I doubt it, to be completely honest with you.
So for me, I mean, I honestly think my favorite listen to this album was the first one. It was the Saturday after we had decided to listen to this. I grabbed a Bluetooth speaker, went into the glorious sunshine that we had over the weekend, spent the afternoon washing my wife's car, and Sweep It Into Space was the perfect accompaniment for that. It was a bit of fuzz in the sun. You've got Jay's vocals there. You've got the odd upbeat song in there. But I think possibly and most importantly, it all blended into the background. I could dip in and out, have my attention held on songs like I Ran Away and Garden, which I loved, but allow that second half of the album to just all melt together to the point that I maybe hadn't noticed that it had switched off for a little while afterwards. And I think I should have known at that point that it wouldn't hold up to more scrutiny. And again, I don't know if I got my hopes up based on Kurt Weill's name being attached to this, or hearing the single, or if it's because I feel responsible for us 3, even though only 2 of us have ended up on stream, having listened to this week. But I equally came away quite disappointed.
Has anybody seen Brad? Where is he?
Yeah. We were hoping to get a dispatch from the field, but alas, he remains on assignment.
Did he even jump in chat?
I haven't seen him in it tonight. Can you do me a favor and just drop him a message and just say, hey, Brad, what did you think of Dinosaur Jr.? And if you can get to it, if you can get a response from him before I just finish off and close off my thoughts, we'll have Brad's dispatch too.
I'll give him a message now.
Yeah, I mean, I came away feeling quite disappointed. I don't think it's a bad album, but like there's so many things that I talk about every week, like lyrics, like vocal performances, like the other little sprinkles that really didn't feature in my notes this week because there was frankly nothing to write home about on a lot of those points. So yeah, I mean, no surprises. This won't make my rotation. We don't really do, I think, recommendations on this stream. But I would say that if it came to it, I couldn't recommend this album if somebody was asking me about it. But what I would say to them at that moment, and what I would quite happily tell them to do, is to listen to I Ran Away. I really enjoyed that track. I know you didn't. I may well play it again as soon as we get off this stream.
It's not like, again, it's not that I didn't enjoy the track. I just didn't think it was particularly
Yeah.
standard. That's the odd thing for me about this album is there's some songs on here that I thought were really, really good. Like, really good. Some of the best tracks we've listened to so far in the whole time we've been doing this were on this album. But just overall, it was weak. Over bloated, weirdly, even though it didn't feel that long. But yeah, just not a lot to say about it, which is possibly the most disappointing thing you can come away with from an album when you've had to sort of listen to it as many times as we do, and then write detailed notes about it. The fact that you don't have a lot to say when we usually have too much to say and run over 2.5 hours or whatever it was last week on an album is quite disappointing.
Tell you what, my friend, we've still managed about an hour and 40. So I think that's pretty decent going. But yeah, look, I think that ties it off at that point. And what we can do after both describing an album as a little bit disappointing is we can look ahead to next week. No prizes to anybody in chat who can guess which album we'll be taking a look at. But we have got something that we're a little excited about on the docket, right?
I'm very excited about this one. I've got it here. I've been looking forward to this one for months. I have pretty much loved every single of it. Spoilers alert. So at least half of the album I think is great. It's Gojira's Fortitude. I love this band. I didn't actually get into them that long ago, but yeah, love them. Can't wait to talk about it. Get really deep into that one. And obviously I've got the record to listen to this week. So yeah, had this one on pre-order for a while.
Yeah, no. Gojira, again, a band that I've heard of, a band that I haven't listened to that much, but working in the circles that we do, paying attention to the things that we do, and also you sending me some Gojira. You sent me their festival performance a little while ago too. That's sitting on YouTube, and that was a great way to spend an hour and 40 minutes or 2 hours, whatever it was. But yeah, this is like the big release of this month. I think a lot of people are chalking it up to sort of one of their more exciting releases of the year. I've heard those singles, like you say, a lot of good things there. So very much looking forward to having that discussion next week.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the first, I'd say, pure metal band we're covering, right?
Yeah. I mean, take your pick. You can either say that the closest that we got to metal in our time doing these streams is tonight's Dinosaur Jr. stream or the Slope stream.
Definitely Lana Del Rey. The chuggy riffs, dude. Yeah, the Conway record.
Or New Long Leg. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think we've named all of them now. Spirit of the Beehive.
Citizen. There you go. Got them all out there. They're all available on YouTube, so go watch them if you want.
Please do hop over to our channel. If you're joining us here in Twitch chat, thank you very much for coming along with us tonight. I think one thing we have found out for sure tonight, Cam, is that when Brad is away, the boys will play. There's no doubt about that. But
I have no idea what that means.
It's like quite a common saying, isn't it? When blank's away, the boys will play. It just means like Brad is the one thing holding us in check, and like we went off the rails a little bit towards the start. We held our own on the discussion, but
yeah, I think so. Would have been nice to have. I had many questions I wanted to ask Brad about chord progressions, being the jazzy situationalist professional musician amongst us, but alas, he was not here, so could not offer anything. We'll get him back though. We'll find him.
Absolutely.
If you see him out there, let us know.
So yeah, on that note, we are hitting wrap up time here. And if you've missed any of tonight's discussion or you want to hear it again, we'll have a recorded version of this going up on our YouTube channel on Sunday. Be sure to subscribe to us and hit the bell for all of our discussions as they go live, and indeed the music that we, Ballpark Music, release.
Just want to say I've seen the chat, and the last message was show cat. I can't show my cat because I don't know where she is. But to the person that sent that message, you can see the cat anytime you want.
I did hear the cat on a couple of occasions. So I think we fulfilled it.
I'll bring her next time. She can sit on my shoulder or something.
So yeah, if you are watching that recorded version up on YouTube, we will be going live again next Friday at 8 p.m. GMT with another album review. We're going to say shout out once again to Millie Draws a Lot on Instagram, that is spelled with a Y, for all of our wonderful graphics. If you want more Dinosaur Jr., you can head over to their Bandcamp, dinosaurjr.bandcamp.com. And if you want more Ballpark music, then follow us right here on Twitch, subscribe to us, and hit the bell on YouTube. And check out our link tree, that is /Ballpark Music UK, where you can find all of your socials. Cam, 2-piece, would you do it again?
If we have to, yeah. I think it's fine. As long as you're here controlling all the stuff that you need to control, I'll chat to anyone.
Well, I tell you what, I've had a lot of fun as well. It's but yeah, looking forward to us finding out any suggestions in chat. Let us know. We'll check there. Thank you very much, folks. We will see you